Hey, so I wanted to show people the new Mechlab. I know that there were some people who played MechWarrior Online before and got frustrated with how bad the old Mechlab was, and I want to show them the new one. So right here we've got my Stalker, and this Stalker is currently loaded with a missile configuration, which I do not like, and I'm going to modify it. So let's go into the Mechlab, which is in the upper middle tab here. So here's the most important and immediate thing. In the old mech lab, if you wanted to modify something on your mech, you had to go into its individual body part. So if you wanted to change something on the right arm on the mech, you'd have to go focus in on the right arm of the mech. You would zoom in on the right arm of the mech. You could modify the parts on that part of the mech, but you couldn't see or modify, say, the left torso or the right arm or whatever. So you go into the right arm, mess with that, pull out, zoom in on the left arm, mess with that, pull out, zoom in on the left torso, mess that pull. It was just super slow and super tedious. Now all of the parts of the mech are just laid out flat like this in sort of a paper doll configuration. You can see all the parts at once. You can modify all the parts well, you can't modify all the parts at once. You can only modify one part at a time. But the point is you can see all the parts at once. You don't have to sort of dive in and out into different sections to see or mess with any of this stuff. Okay. Here in the sort of middle left is your upgrades panel. That used to be a completely separate page on the old MacLab. Here it's right on the same page as everything else, and it allows you to make some structural changes to the mech. You can give it the upgraded Indo Steel armor configuration. You can upgrade the missile guidance system from standard to the Artemis 4 system. You can upgrade the heatsink systems from standard to double, etc., etc. And you can just toggle back and forth between the two of those right on the same screen, easy peasy. In the lower right here, under mech stats, all of the information about sort of the overall state of your mech build easily available to you. So you can see this is Stalker is an 85-ton mech, and I've filled up all of its weight capacity with all this equipment that I don't actually like. It's got 78 equipment slots, and I filled up 72 of those. It's almost maxed out for armor. It can carry a maximum of 526 armor, and I've got 512, etc., etc. It also has these two useful buttons. Strip mech allows me to just pull all of the equipment off of the mech simultaneously without having to pull individual parts out if I wanted to just change the mech completely. And reset mech, if I make a bunch of changes but decide I don't like them, I can revert back to the original state of the mech. Now, I don't like this configuration, so I'm going to strip all the equipment out. So I just hit strip mech. It gives me the choice of whether I want to strip out the equipment or the armor or both. In this case, I'm going to leave the armor alone, and I'm going to just strip out the equipment. It also has modules, but this mech isn't loaded with any modules at the moment, and it doesn't have any cockpit items at the moment either. But I'm going to hit cancel because I was going to show you one other thing. Up here on the upper right, you've got these tabs: weapons, ammo, equipment, engines, modules. The nice thing that they've done here is you can collapse all of these lists and expand them. And you've got this little box here that says owned items. In over time, as you play MechWarrior, you accrue equipment as you purchase mechs and buy equipment. This allows you to choose to pull just from the pool of equipment that you already own instead of all of the stuff that's available, which you can buy from the store with your money down here in the lower left. I've got 5 million imaginary space dollars. Now, I like energy weapons, so I've purchased a bunch of energy weapons, but if you look down here in missiles, I don't do as much with missiles as I do with energy weapons, so if I just do owned items, that list collapses down nicely just to the missile stuff that I already own. And There's another category of weapon in MechWarrior called ballistic weapons that don't show up on this list at all. And they don't show up on the list at all because this particular mech has no ballistic weapon points. It cannot mount ballistic weapons, and so it doesn't even clutter up your build list with the ballistic category because you could never use them at all. If you go into ammo, same kind of thing. You can go just to the owned type of ammo, and the nice thing is you've got this extra box here for mounted weapons where it will only show you the ammunition that is available for the weapons that are actually mounted on the mech, which is great because there's dozens of different types of ammunition in this game, and this way the only thing I have to worry about is LRM ammo because that's all that this mech has. In this case, I don't even want the RLMs to begin with, so back down to strip mech. I'm okay with the armor, but I'm going to strip the equipment. So now I've got an empty mech that has its armor all available. I'm going to fill up. I stripped some armor off of the legs because you can afford to take a little bit of armor off of long-range missile mechs because they tend to stand in the back of battles and they don't necessarily get as much direct damage. I've got these warnings up at the top here. It's basically warning me that the mech is not viable. I can't take it out into the battlefield because it doesn't have any engine. It doesn't have any weapons. We're about to fix that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a weapon configuration. So I'm going to collapse the missiles, open up the energy. These little symbols here show you the types of weapons that it can mount. It's got two energy slots here and one missile hardpoint, two missile hardpoints here in the left torso, one missile hardpoint and one AMS hardpoint. That's for the anti-missile system. Which I don't think I'm going to bother to put on this. The anti-missile systems are nice, but eh. And then two energy slots and one missile slot here. But I'm not going to put any missiles on this mech, so I'm just going to go. This is an old configuration that I already know that I like, so I'm just going to do laser, laser, laser. Actually, large laser. And one large laser in the center torso. These large lasers run hot, so I'm going to put in heat sinks. These are cooling units that help me manage all of the heat output of these lasers. And remember, under the old system, I'd have to go into the right arm, put double heat sinks in the right arm, come back out, put double heat sinks in the left torso, come back out, but it just, so slow, so irritating. All right, so now I've filled up with a bunch of heat sinks. So let's give it an engine, and I know that originally this was mounted with a standard engine 275. Under the old system, you had this huge page of identical looking engines. You couldn't tell the difference between them. It was really a pain to work your way through the list. Now you've got just a straight up and down list, and what's great is, again, as per usual, you can toggle up here between owned and unowned engines. And here, right on the mech, you can, actually, while I'm here, let me go back and just put some engines are large enough that you can actually put cooling units inside the engine itself. So I just put a double heat sink in the engine itself. But back to the engine list. Okay, so right on the mech itself, you can toggle between standard and XL engines. For people who don't play a lot of MechWarrior, standard engines are heavy but small. They're compact. Which is useful because in MechWarrior you can kill a mech outright by destroying its engine, and smaller engines are harder to hit. You can only damage it by eating your way through the armor of the center torso, which is quite heavy. Which is quite thick, I should say. XL engines are lighter, which means you can put more equipment on the mech, but XL engines have hit boxes that extend into the right torso and the left torso, so it's easier to damage and destroy them than standard engines. So that's a trade-off. Basically, XL engines make your mech a little bit more fragile, but you can put more equipment into them. I don't need an XL engine in this particular case. So I'm just going with standard engine. Now, here's the state of things, and I can go back to this sort of lower right-hand corner. I filled up all of my equipment slots, so I can't put any more weapons or pieces of equipment in the mech. And I've maxed out my armor, so I can't put any more armor in the mech, but I've still got some tonnage. It's only 77.5 out of 85 tons. So in the old days, I would have to go through this like long, tedious list of engines, and it'd just be a big pain in the butt. Here, I can tell that I can move up from my 275 engine to my 300 engine, and the in-game effect of this is it'll make my mech a little faster. So just by using these little buttons, I can go up here. It's a big enough engine that I can actually put another heatsink in there. So I'm going to put another heatsink in there. Alright, so now I have used up all of my equipment slots. I've put in the largest engine that I actually own. I could purchase a bigger engine, but the engines are expensive and I don't feel like purchasing a whole new engine for this case. I've maxed out my armor, and I'm a couple I'm 3 tons short on weight, but that's not the end of the world. I've got all the weapons and equipment that I want. I'm happy. This only took me a couple of minutes to do. It would have been much longer and more annoying than the old system. Up here, the warnings have changed. Now it's just telling me that it knows I've loaded up a lot of lasers, and it's just warning me that if I fire more than 3 of my lasers simultaneously, I'll incur a heat penalty. But that's okay. I'll set it up so it won't fire more than 3 lasers at once. That's not a problem. Because I've only used equipment that I already owned, I haven't had to dip into the store, so it isn't costing me any money. So I'm just going to save, and go back home. So here's my new Stalker setup, loaded down with a bunch of lasers, no more missiles, and much faster, much less painful than the old system. I'm pretty happy. So I hope this is instructive for the people who played a little bit of MechWarrior online before, but were frustrated by the crappy Mechlab system. So I hope that was a useful little demonstration. Thanks. Bye.